So hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel discussion on observability in Mainframe DevOps. My name is Jeanne, and I'm founder and CEO of VirtualZ Computing, and we were really honored to have the Open Mainframe Project invite us to facilitate today's panel representing women in the mainframe. And with me today are two recognized experts in mainframe computing, April Hickel, AVP of Product Management at BMC. Hi, April. And Julie Bergh, Worldwide Lead Security Executive with Rocket Software. So thank you both for joining us today. So DevOps has definitely proven to shorten the development lifecycle and help ensure product quality, bringing together development, operations, automation, and even artificial intelligence. And although mainframe practices originated in mainframe development, today when most people think of DevOps, they're typically thinking of distributed platforms. But today, we see IBM reporting record high growth in mainframe MIPs. New mainframe hardware is able to run up to 1 trillion transactions per day. And businesses are increasingly reintegrating the mainframe into their DevOps practices. But with the evolution of DevOps, we're hearing about something new, observability, reading a lot about observability, hearing a lot about observability, which adds a human element to the software development lifecycle and organizational culture as well. And to define observability, it's often compared to monitoring, with monitoring telling us whether the system works or not, and observability maybe telling us why it's not working. And we chose observability for the Women in IT track because it makes sense that the next evolution in the DevOps lifecycle would apply to diversity, because it takes diverse teams to problem solve, and it's proven that more diverse teams do better at problem solving. And we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of the session as well. But with that, April, I've heard observability called everything from a trendy tech buzzword to monitoring on steroids. And BMC has written quite a bit on observability as well. In your view, what's the difference between monitoring and observability and its importance to the mainframe?
Thanks, Jeannie. So I guess I'm going to sort of take the long way around to answering this question. I think you have to start with the context of monitoring and subsequently observability. I think everybody sitting here has seen how the recent circumstances, so COVID, have accelerated digital transformation. It's sort of digital or done right now. And, you may be thinking about how you yourself are interacting with vendors, whether it's your restaurant and you're ordering food, or it is, for me, I have a college daughter. And so, every call I get is about transferring money to her. So in this digital economy, where we have so much digital transformation happening in customers, in clients, in organizations who have a mainframe, you really have to have a level of system resiliency, a level of availability, a level of customer experience that's very high. So this brings me to talk about monitoring versus observability. So monitoring is really the act of looking at the information provided by, maybe a monitoring solution, information provided in the logs. You may be doing event notification from that. And observability is really sort of a cooperative or associated discipline. Observability is really about making sure all of these systems, all of these applications are making the right information available. So if you think about, observability and monitoring are a little bit of a yin and a yang. And at BMC, we believe this applies to the mainframe in a number of important ways. So the first thing that's important in thinking about observability is the evolution of mainframe systems and applications, and how early in the development life cycle you need to expose the right information. So, if you're DevOps enabling that, if you're modernizing your applications, you need to be thinking about how you make them more observable. The second place we think about it is in the way people interact and solve problems. So observability really brings a culture, as does DevOps, of collaboration, of coming together and using the information to solve a problem. So I think back to you. I hope I answered the question, Jeannie. Back to you.
You did. Thank you so much, April. Artificial intelligence and observability are often tied together as well with the concept of applying machine learning to pattern recognition and monitoring. And in some of my research for this panel, I also read an article that said observability, when combined with continuous automation and artificial intelligence, holds the promise to deliver the actionable answers needed to ensure cloud-native applications work perfectly. And to your point, April, that cross-collaborative teams can deliver the best user experiences and business outcomes that are possible. Julie, welcome to the panel. You're a real-world mainframe practitioner as well, having worked in a variety of very large organizations. You've had a lot of roles ranging from programming to IT audit, and you're certainly a recognized expert in mainframe security. What's your view of observability, particularly when combined with AI, and then given your expertise in mainframe security, how do you see security and observability connected in the mainframe DevOps lifecycle?
So thanks, Jeannie. It's interesting that April had kind of talked about the monitoring and bringing things together. And when you really think about from like my background in security, when I was asked to talk a little bit about this and go into this, is I really kind of want to spend a few minutes talking about monitoring, because a lot of times from being in audit and being a director in audit and looking at these things, it really was kind of about monitoring all these things. So you really kind of got into that mindset of monitoring. But when you think about it again from an applications services area, that infrastructure, and that's kind of historically kind of where I've looked at it, is you really think about people, and kind of like April talked about it, seamlessly, effortlessly, want things to work really fast in the environment. But these are all interconnected parts. And when you look at this, even from like the DevOps, and now it's kind of like DevSecOps that are out there, it really requires all these things working together. And kind of like April talked about, there's volumes of information out there, and how do you siphon through all this? How do you contain all that information? How do you determine what's important that's out there? How do you troubleshoot that information that is out there and look at that overall process? So when you think about it, and kind of going back to even what April and building on that, is when you think about monitoring, we're looking for those potential problems that are out there, which includes, maybe alerting on something that's happened, something that's maybe going on in your environment. Or looking at those dashboards, how do we know things are working in our environment? And working through that problem resolution, that's kind of what April alluded to, which the DevOps and observability is bringing a lot of this information together to make sure it's all working together and happening, and making sure we're doing it, looking for improvement, whether it's maybe performance and capacity planning, etc. So, when you really think about it, how do we correlate that data into some kind of intelligence? That's kind of where that AI kind of comes into play to some of it. But there's a couple of things when you think about this is, observability, as they talk about, is instrumenting those systems and applications to collect all that information. And when you think about it and kind of talking through some of these things that I'd gone through, and even April touched on them, is when you think of monitoring, it's telling you how the system works. Is it working? And from an observability point of view, one should be asking, why is it not working? So we're looking at how it's working. Observability is looking as like maybe why it isn't working. And then when you think about from monitoring, especially in the field of security, it's really looking at those collection of logs that's out there and doing those metrics and normalizing that data, where observability is kind of disseminating that information and making it available for you. Monitoring, we tend to look for failures. What's going wrong that's out there in your environment, and doing that automated analysis of that. Observability is trying to understand that system behavior. So, again, and you see a lot of the articles that are out there about, monitoring is not observability and observability is not monitoring, but they do really work very close and hand in hand. And again, when you think about it from a security standpoint, it's often thought of as looking at what people are doing via the different tools. But, when you look at observability, it's more about making that application observable. And that's kind of what April was talking about it. So when you think about that I kind of give the analogy as I went through some of these things, I was reading the articles like you were, it's when you think about observability, and one of the examples that I read was a really good example, is about driving a car, and you're driving down the highway in a car, and you've got cruise control set on, but yet you're driving down, and as you're driving down the highway, the car's maintaining that speed of whatever you set for the cruise control. But as you decide to start going up a hill, because of what's been built into the car, it determines, well, I need to accelerate to maintain that speed that's up there. Vice versa, as I come down the other side of the hill, I'm not going to speed up. Is that observability, the metrics that have kind of built into it, making that information available, has made it, that car is going to start slowing down because now I'm coming down the hill and I need to make sure that I'm staying at appropriate speed. So I talked a little bit about this earlier, but when I think of the trends with DevOps and observability, and it's really beyond developers and operators, it really is becoming DevSecOps that are out there. And it really is combining all that to understand that and kind of playing into the observability. It's not just about infrastructure anymore. So that's kind of where I think about it from an AI and observability standpoint, is helping you answer questions like, why is X broken? What performance has changed? What do I need to be thinking about? And that really is kind of telling you from a security viewpoint of what observability means to kind of me, and kind of caps on what's going on from a DevOps standpoint. And again, just continuing looking from an artificial intelligence. And one of the things when you think about it, going back to the observability, is you've got to get this information from different areas, because there's just not one thing out there that's going to tell you everything that's going on wrong or right in the mainframe. There's different areas, and that's why you need to have that with the AI out there's a key component to help you understand your environment.
Great, thank you.
Back to you, Jeannie.
Thank you, Julie. So before we move on from, maybe helping our audience understand the difference between monitoring and observability, and tying this back to the Open Mainframe project a bit, do either of you have any other comments you'd like to add relative to the definition of observability as it relates to monitoring? Okay. So let's move on. So observability, really is known as adding that human element, requiring collaboration across every organization and stakeholder in the DevOps lifecycle, including the mainframe. And specific to the Open Mainframe project, one of their goals is to increase collaboration across the mainframe community and develop shared tools and resources for the ecosystem. April and Julie, how do you think about observability relative to Open Mainframe project, and how it should be or could be relevant to the open source community? April, do you maybe want to go first?
Thanks, Jeannie. I said earlier that observability is really about making information available and then developing a culture of collaboration. And I would say this is equally relevant on the mainframe. The mainframe is part of a complex system of interconnected environments. The mainframe isn't now, nor has it ever been, an island. So, our recent survey shows that still in a lot of companies, 50% of their data might reside on the mainframe. So the applications and the services being built around the mainframe, accessing data on the mainframe, taking advantage of the transactional power of the mainframe, are not unique in needing the observability. So I think, a practical takeaway for the audience is that observability is both something that starts early in the application development lifecycle. So if you think about building new applications, building a DevOps environment for your mainframe, really that has its roots in integration. It has its roots in automation. And it has its roots in making sure that the things that you build are observable, because it's no good for you to get agile, to get your mainframe automation and continuous integration, continuous delivery capabilities delivered to the market, and then have no idea if the things you're delivering are making performance or experience better or worse. So that's why we think and we see our customers who are adopting the BMC CompuWare DevOps tools as really valuing observability and integration. So that's one thing. And then I would say the other thing relative to the mainframe is that we see an open borders approach. So at BMC, we're really prioritizing our delivery of SDKs, APIs, CLIs in a way that allows an exchange of information between tools, between processes. It allows access to data. So I think for the mainframe, the two takeaways that I'd really leave our audience with are: you need to think about delivering observable applications as you're modernizing your application development and delivery for the mainframe. And you really need to think about an open borders approach. It's not a silo or a proprietary environment. Embrace the capabilities that open source brings you. Make sure that you're open and integratable, and that you're prioritizing and delivering the right types of APIs, and that you're really supportive of the broader ecosystem. Those are things that we're doing, and we see them really helping mainframe customers reach the outcomes that they want to reach.
That's really great perspective, April. Thank you so much. Appreciate you sharing the BMC CompuWare DevOps story in that way related to the Open Mainframe project. Julie, what's your view on how observability should or could be relevant to the Open Mainframe community?
I kind of like with April, I really agree a lot when you think about that. And as she talked about with the application programming interfaces, the APIs that are out there, more and more, when you think of a lot of the mainframe software that's out there, and like she said with BMC, is they're taking advantage of those to take advantage of the open source software that's maybe out there and available. And one of the things that when you think about some of this, and again, going back to that observability and why it's very important is, the one thing that's nice about open source tools is they're free, right? They're out there, they're making them available. You can customize them to meet your needs. But you also need to, and again, I put my security hat on going, I need an observability. I even need that monitoring that's out there, because I need to make sure that these changes are being tracked, that something's not being introduced into the system that should not be introduced into the system. And again, I think about it more from, again, putting on my security hat. And that's where observability is really kind of comes into play, like April had talked about. If I've got these people coming together to look at these things to help solve this problem because I've got this information out there, then it makes sure that, yes, if I'm using open source, I think it's very viable, but I'm also making sure that I'm not doing anything that may impact the company that I'm working for that's out there. And again, it helps me with that being data-driven in my environment. And again, it helps you with debugging and everything else, because open source is all about, I'm going to give you some code, you can customize it, but now all of a sudden, it's kind of your responsibility. But if I have that observability, it makes it easier for me to bug that because I made that information available to everybody on my team.
Yeah. I guess I'd add one more thing as we're talking about this observability and monitoring. one of the things that I think everybody also needs to recognize is, in addition to this collaboration and the instrumentation of observability, the amount of data that's going to be made available as you're going through the process of developing better observability, or you're looking at security like in Julie's world, or whatever it might be, is immense, right? And it's just far surpassing an eyes on glass type approach to managing health. We're really moving into the need for prediction, for being able to take a vast number of KPIs or information about security and use techniques, machine learning techniques, artificial intelligence, in order to solve an outcome, right? To make a prediction, to isolate a root cause, to detect a threat, whatever it might be. So I would say, observability culture and the techniques of applying machine learning are all sort of linked. And I think in the mainframe, especially, we can't cling to how it's been done in the past. I have a monitor, I have I'm securing the perimeter of the mainframe, or security through obscurity. Those are techniques which served the mainframe and the mainframe community well in the past. But the time has come to really embrace some of the newer approaches, like Julie was talking about, prediction, AI, DevOps in delivering applications. So, I'd encourage people as they're on their journey and looking at their own environment to really think about the implication that observability has on the types of approaches you take to managing your mainframe.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you both. Before we close and go to questions, do you have anything else that you'd like to add relative to observability, Julie or April?
No, I think we've kind of summarized it very well, and it's been great talking to April and you on this discussion.
Thank you. So you're both obviously industry experts in IBM-Z with years of experience and expertise, and we appreciate you helping educate us on observability today. And as I said earlier, we chose the concept of observability for our panel representing women in the mainframe because of the human element and requiring collaboration across diverse teams, and knowing that diversity powers collaboration. And we all know there's lots of research that shows diverse teams are better at problem solving. And so it does seem natural that the human element would be the next evolution in DevOps. I thought it was also interesting, as I was researching for this panel, I learned that there's also research specific to patent portfolios, creating new products that solve customer problems. And the research shows that even patents that are highly cited by others as an indicator that they're highly relevant and successful patents are likely created by diverse teams as well. So we did feel it was appropriate to tie the power of diversity to the concept of observability for today's discussion. And we hope you found it interesting and valuable as well. So April and Julie, again, thank you for sharing your expertise and educating us on observability in the mainframe, and for representing women in IT at the Open Mainframe Project. So with that, we'd like to open it up for questions. Thank you so much.